Hello, and welcome to Book Witches with a B. I'm Orja.
And I'm Colleen.
And in our podcast, we do a deep dive into some of our favorite books using our degree backgrounds. I studied literature.
I studied sociology with a minor in literature and cinema.
So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to Book Witches with a B, episode 2 of season 3.
Woo!
We are going to be going over chapters 6 through 10 of A Court of Mist and Fury. But before we do that, we have a very exciting announcement to make.
Yes.
I will be moving back to St. Louis very shortly, actually.
I'm so excited.
And so Colleen, I know, Colleen and I are going to be able to do all of our episodes in person, probably starting in January.
We need some time, yes, to get there, but yes.
But that's our news. We're very excited. And that's why you see a very blank screen behind me. My apartment is in absolute chaos. We're packing everything up. It's like mayhem over here. I like lost my makeup one day. All of my hairstyling tools, one of them is in St. Louis with my husband's mom because I left it there. Um, a couple of I have like 3 different hair dryers. Long story, but my husband packed all of our like superfluous stuff up and I was like, yeah, I never use a hair dryer, but then it got really cold here. And then I realized that my number one hairstyling tool is in St. Louis. And so I was looking for my hair dryers and my husband's like, oh yeah, we already took that up to your parents. And I was like, great. So I have no hair dryer. I have no hair anything. And so here we are. Oh, and I got a haircut.
It looks very cute. I liked it. I told you
Thanks.
this, but
Yes,
it is very cute.
yes. So, anyways, that's our exciting news. We're so excited. I think it's gonna
Yes,
make our podcast even more fun.
yes, because our in-person energy, well, you've seen the episodes. It's different. So
Maybe
you
we'll
understand.
finally get to a point where we're not so like crazy, you know?
I don't know if that's how that works. It won't be like as occasional. It'll be all the time. So it will be less like, you're here.
Yeah,
But
yeah. But you're right,
I
it'll
also
still
think
be
that's just our
crazy.
energy.
I think so too. It's like the more we see each other, the crazier we get when we see each other.
Well, yeah, because now we know all the things. So
Yeah.
just anyhow, yes. I'm
Anywho.
clearly stoked to have her back. So
Yes. All right, so let's get started with our chapter recap. Woo woo. All
that
right,
was me
chapter
mimicking.
6. The
That was me
imagination.
mimicking or like change there. Yes, I'm
Oh,
glad I
or like
did.
pixie. It's called pixie dust.
Incredible. Yeah, it's that thing. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Chapter 6. Feyre is embarrassed by Rhys's motives to teach Feyre how to read and says no at first. Rhysand points out that it's a necessary skill. She's going to be the wife of a High Lord soon, and he adds mental shielding to the agenda. Feyre wonders what Rhys's motives are, and in her frustration, she folds a fork in her hand, quote, into a tangle of metal. Rhysand comments that Feyre is rather strong for High Fae, which is new to Feyre. She's not aware of that. He then goes on to say that as she's been reborn from the combined power of the 7 High Lords, he's curious if anything else transferred during the process. We're introduced to Morrigan, or Moore, which is very exciting because I love her. Moore is warm and welcoming. She hugs Farah tightly and she smells like citrus and cinnamon. We learn that she's Rhys's only surviving family. She's his cousin, quote, in the loosest of terms, whatever that means. But she is his only surviving family, and Farah remembers that Rhys's father was the one responsible for Tamlin's lack of family. Moore and Rhys have an easy, playful relationship. It's kind of like this. Farah's just sitting there, like, watching them because Rhysand has only ever been this extremely powerful, terrifying, mysterious, dark, High Lord. And then she's kind of just watching Moore, like, irritate him, like poke him and have a little bit of fun with it. And Rhysand is very clearly just like he like rolls her eyes at her, she sticks her tongue out at him. It's this very playful relationship that they have.
Mm.
Farah remarks that she hadn't seen more under the mountain, and it turns out she wasn't there, but Rhys cuts her off before she can say where she was. Farah finally agrees to reading and shielding lessons. Rhys had a point, and she has nothing else to do for the rest of her week. I have kept note of all of the different things that Farah is meant to read and write, and I'm going to read them after the chapter recap because they're really fun.
They're so funny.
Rhysand teaches Farah the basics of shoving someone out of her mind and building a shield. She imagines a wall of adamant, dark as night, slamming down and shielding her mind from Rhysand's like claws, as they're described. Farah asks why she can't be let out of the bargain. She thought that things had changed between them at the end under the mountain. Rhysand insists that he's not her enemy. They speak about how Farah is treated at the spring court, and it's apparent that Rhysand does not like Ianthe, and he's also extremely judgmental of Tamlin's treatment of Farah. He says, like, you were wrapped up in, like, bows and lace, and you looked ridiculous, and it was like you were some kind of reward for Tamlin, even though you're the one that freed everyone, and you're the one that died. He's very upset about it. I would be too. Farah should be too.
She should be more than she is. Yeah.
Yeah. After her lesson, Rhys takes Farah up to a room at the top floor with a large map of Prythian, Hybern, and the Mordor lands, and informs Farah that war is coming. Dun dun dun. Chapter 7. Feyre begs Rhysand not to invade the mortal lands. Rhysand says he's not going to do so. He's kind of surprised. He's like, you really do think that I'm the bad guy here. I'm not going to invade the mortal realms. And then he also like reminds Feyre because she's been practicing keeping her mental shield up. He's like, put that shield back up. I can hear everything you're thinking right now.
Oh, put it up.
And yeah. Farah realizes that Tamlin must have known that there's a war coming with all of the tension and the spreading of the right message and all of that, but he never told her. Hybern is planning to conquer Prythian and the mortal lands by bringing down the wall. Rhys informs Farah that Hybern would have allies in Prythian. We find out that Rhys actually fought in that war 500 years ago on the side of the humans, which is unexpected information. Which means he was young, but he was old enough to fight. So Rhysand is old. He's an old man.
He is a man. Like, fairy standards. Even, I feel like.
I think so, yeah. He's older than Tamlin.
He is older than Tamlin. Also, this is a mild sidebar, but we've met the summer court person in the first book, correct? They
Yeah,
said like a new
Tarquin.
person took over. He's
Tarquin.
80. Did you know
Whoa.
that he was 80?
I did not know that he was 80.
He's
80 is
so
like
much.
very young and high. Yeah.
It makes a lot more later make sense, and I think they established that, but I saw something with all their ages, and Reese was the old man. Anywho, Tarquin is very young. That comes into play later. But
It does come into play
anywho,
later, but I had no idea. But yeah, Rhysand actually makes mention of, with Amarantha's rule, there's several young, untested High Lords. So it's Tarquin
Mhm.
included. So it's like a perfect
It's
time for Hybern to like invade and conquer,
mhm.
actually. Rhys also informs Feyre that Tamlin has long existing ties to Hybern, and he hopes that Feyre can convince Tamlin to fight with Rhysand against Hybern. Feyre's like, Tamlin would never side with Hybern, and Rhys is like, that may be, but will he fight with us? Like, maybe you can use, I mean, it's one thing to not side with Hybern, it's another thing to actively fight against him, so I think
Yeah.
Rhys is hoping that he can use Feyre to his advantage there. Apparently, Feyre has a skill set. We're informed that Rhysand has tried to catch the Zuriel twice and failed. Meanwhile, Farah goes, it wasn't that hard to catch the Zuriel. Again, the Zuriel likes her.
I also feel like all of these men give up after twice because I think Lucian was also twice. Apparently twice,
Yes.
and no, can't try again.
Will
Can't do
not
it
try
again.
a third time.
Fair, honestly, but still.
He's basically like, you caught the Zuriel, I heard. You also trapped the Middengard worm. You are a
Mhm.
skilled hunter and trapper, and I have need of your skill set if you decide to work with us. He also points out that Farah is not normal. She has extra power. She could be a high lady, contrary to what Tamlin said. Farah's like, there's no such thing as a high lady, because Tamlin said so. And Rhysand's like, we'll talk about that later. Can't wait till later.
And get back to that.
He also says that there's a very real possibility that she might have a little bit of all seven High Lords' power. And then I have some excerpt to read here. So they're talking about the fact that she might have all of these powers, and Rhysand is basically like, you should probably start training because we don't no one knows what kind of powers you do have. You should start training. And Farah, this is the excerpt. I began shaking my head. Tamlin won't allow it. Tamlin isn't your keeper, and you know it. I'm his subject, and he is my high lord. You are no one's subject, Rhysand says. I went rigid at the flash of teeth, the smoke-like wings that flared out. I will say this once and only once, Rhysand purred, stalking to the map on the wall. You can be a pawn, be someone's reward, and spend the rest of your immortal life bowing and scraping and pretending you're less than him, than Ianthe, than any of us. If you want to pick that road, then fine. A shame, but it's your choice. The shadow of wings rippled again. But I know you, more than you realize, I think, and I don't believe for one damn minute that you're remotely fine with being a pretty trophy for someone who sat on his ass for nearly 50 years, then sat on his ass while you were shredded apart. Farah doesn't see Rhys for the rest of the week after the little argument, or more. She just practices a different sentence each day, which again I will read soon. And she practices her shielding, putting the mental shields up and taking them down and putting them up again. And though Farah still has nightmares, the openness of the room she wakes up in prevents the nausea from setting in, so she's not like throwing up every night. On her last day, Farah overhears Rhysand and Moore talking about someone named Asriel and an attack at a temple in a place called Césaire. Priestesses have been slain, and the trove has been looted. Rhys's rage causes his wings to appear, and Farah sees them for the first time in their full form. It's as if a piece of Rhys was missing before, and he's whole now. They mention someone named Cassian as well, and a type of lesser fae called Illyrier, called Illyrians, who apparently some of them really liked Amarantha. Rhys tells Farah about winnowing, moving from one place to another in the blink of an eye, and it's a rare gift and only powerful fae can do it. The next morning, Farah is taken home. She finds Tamlin with Lucien and a couple other sentries in the study, and he races to her, asking if she's okay and ignoring her when she says that she is. This is very Dane of him.
Very Dane of him. It is.
Right?
Yeah.
Tamlin admits that he trashed half the house when she left and warns Farah that Rhysand is likely just playing games with her to get her comfortable enough to drop her guard so that he can act his evil true plans. Tamlin says he won't let Farah go again, but she knows there's nothing that can be done. It's a magical bargain. Before Farah can get changed or they can spend any intimate time together, Tamlin is like, I have questions for you, and basically interrogates Farah about her time at the Night Court. I think he'd probably call it a debriefing. I would call it an interrogation.
It is, yeah.
hmm She's like, I didn't realize I was a spy. And he's like, well, you have access, so I mean, if you
I
have to
mean, you're gonna do
go.
it. This is the only way I can justify it in my brain. Just go along with it.
Yeah. Um, Tamlin admits that he had suspected that Farah had extra powers, but he hoped that it wasn't true as it would make her a target of the other High Lords, and Lucien agrees. Tamlin says that she doesn't need to train and shouldn't as it would draw too much of the wrong kind of attention. Tamlin shuts down further discussion and continues on with his interrogation slash debriefing. Chapter 8. A week later, it's Tithe. So the week before Tithe comes is spent with business as usual. Tamlin, gives Farah a day of, lovemaking in the grass and whatever, and then he goes, leaving on business and keeping Farah heavily guarded, but alone, with only Ianthe for company. During Tithe, Farah endures hours of Spring Court Fae mooning at her or crying at her presence while they offer Tamlin whatever they owe. A water wraith comes up in line and kneels before Tamlin and begs for an exception. There are no fish left in the pond, and the water wraiths have nothing to give. They have nothing to eat for themselves. Tamlin refuses and says that she must pay within 3 days offered double the next month, and Feyre is aghast. Tamlin's wearing a crown made of gold and precious gemstones. Meanwhile, the water wraiths are starving. Feyre asks Tamlin why he can't make an exception. They have more than enough, but Tamlin says that this is just the way it has always been. Feyre excuses herself, trying to ignore the 3 sentries that Tamlin sends with her, and races out to find the water wraith. She takes her ruby and gold studded bracelet, her golden necklace, and her diamond earrings off and offers them to the wraith to pay her tithe. She insists that it's not a bargain, like she doesn't want anything in return. And the water wraith bows deeply to her in thanks, telling Feyre that she will not forget, and neither will any of her sisters. They will not forget this kindness. Later that evening, at the dinner table, Tamlin and Feyre argue about Feyre's actions. I have another excerpt. Tamlin's lips thinned. Because you undermine the laws of this court when you behave like that. Because this is how things are done here. And when you hand that gluttonous fairy the money she needs, it makes this entire court look weak. Don't you talk to me like that, I said, baring my teeth. He slammed his hand on the table, claws poking through his flesh. But I leaned forward, bracing my own hands on the wood. You still have no idea what it was like for me, to be on the verge of starvation for months at a time. And you can call her a glutton all you like, but I have sisters too, and I remember what it felt like to return home without any food. Lucian tries to de escalate the argument, and Tamlin snaps at him as well, pulling his rank as High Lord. In her fury, Feyre all of a sudden snaps into someone else's mind. She realizes that it's Lucian's based on the thoughts. It's like clever, strategizing, whatever. And in her surprise, snaps back into her own. And to kind of hide that, and she's still furious, she gets up from the table and throws her napkin down. But before she turns to leave the room, she notices that there are 2 burned handprints on the table hidden beneath her discarded napkin. Ooh. After pacing her room and mulling over the 2 powers she'd just exhibited, Alice comes in to get Feyre ready for bed. She tells Feyre that word of her kindness will spread, something Feyre is afraid of. Alice definitely approves of Feyre's actions, although she won't say it because she is technically a member of the Spring Court, so she won't say anything against her High Lord. After midnight, Feyre gives up on waiting for Tamlin to come to her, so she finds him in his study alone. He apologizes and tells Feyre that she'd had every right to act as she had and stand up for her actions. She was right. He gives Feyre a present to apologize. It's a traveling painting kit, but Feyre's eyes snag on the red paint that remind her of the blood, and the blue paint that remind her of the eyes of the Fey woman she'd murdered. And Tamlin is basically like, I just thought if you started painting again, maybe. And he doesn't finish his sentence, but basically it's like, maybe if you start painting again, things could get back to normal. Farah asks if she did start painting again, if she'd even be allowed to go where she wanted, unsupervised, and Tamlin doesn't need to answer. She knows the answer is no. She tries to explain that she can't live this way. It's suffocating. She wants to help. And then, oof, this part is so rough. I have an excerpt to read.
Oh, no.
She asks because she wants to help. She wants to do something. I can't live like this. I can't live with this suffocation of just being guarded and not being able to do anything. You've given enough, Farah. I know, but I faced him, met his stare, the full power of the High Lord of the Spring Court. I'm harder to kill now. I'm faster, stronger. My family was faster and stronger than you, and they were murdered quite easily. Then marry someone who can put up with this. He blinked slowly. Then he said with terrible softness, Do you not want to marry me then? I tried not to look at the ring on my finger, at that emerald. Of course I do. Of course I do. My voice broke. But you, Tamlin, the walls pushed in on me, the quiet, the guards, the stairs, what I'd seen at the tithe today. I'm drowning, I managed to say. I am drowning, and the more you do this, the more guards, you might as well be shoving my head under the water. Nothing in those eyes, that face. But then I cried out, instinct taking over as his power blasted through the room. The windows shattered, the furniture splintered, and that box of paints and brushes and paper, it exploded into dust and glass and wood.
And is too old to be having outbursts. He is not a young Fae.
He is not. He is too damn old.
Like, I think like some of the younger ones that he's not as old as Rhys, but he's old enough. There's
He
not
is
that
an
much of a
adult.
difference.
He's an adult.
And like very well established adult. Like this is not like a new thing for him.
No.
Throwing a temper tantrum at like 40.
Yeah, it's actually so horrid. Which brings us to chapter 10. The study has exploded, but Farah hasn't been hurt. The debris has fallen around her as if she'd been shielded by Tamlin. Tamlin tries to go to her, but can't, and Farah realizes that it's her shield of invisible air up around herself. She protected herself. He begs to be let in, and she lets him in and lets him apologize and beg for a chance to do better and lessen the guards and whatever. Over the next few days, he stays true to his word. He spends time with her. They make love and stuff like that. He lessens the guards. They're still there, but they're not like at her every step. But then Tamlin leaves again on business. Farah reflects over the next few days that Tamlin is a protector, and that's something that she'd wanted when she was mortal, close to starving, scared, powerless. But she didn't have the nerve to wonder what she wanted now or what she'd become now. She continues to practice her writing, reading, and mental shielding as she has nothing else to do with her time. She also continues to have nightmares that wake her up and send her flying to the bathroom to spill her guts out. One morning, Farah wakes up to voices arguing outside. She's been staying in bed later and later each day, and at some point, like sometimes she even just doesn't even bother to get up for lunch. She just wastes away in bed. Farah suddenly realizes that it's time to go back to the night court and wraps herself in a blanket because her clothes had been ripped to shreds by Tamlin the night before. And Rhysand asks angrily if they're running low on food at the spring court when he notices her. Tamlin and Rhys argue a bit more, and Rhys commands Farah to get dressed so they can go. As she puts her night court clothes on, she asks Tamlin if it might be a good idea to make amends with Rhys as war is coming. He declines. Farah notices that her clothes are in fact looser on her than they had been the month before. Before they leave, Tamlin offers anything in exchange for breaking the bargain. He's basically like, I will give you anything if you just break this bargain with Farah. And Rhys is like, I already have everything I want. And then he winnows Farah away, and that is the
Pussy
end
boy.
of yes, that is the end of the chapter recap. Whew. So
Rough.
a lot to unpack here.
It's a rough
Let's.
section.
It is super rough. It's super rough. Let's do chapter superlatives first.
Okay.
Drama queen. It's very clearly he's
Once
Tamlin.
again, this is just gonna be Tamlin again. I mean, like this, it's actually very fitting in this particular situation, but I understand if someone who you were like clearly obsessed with, I don't even think it's love at this point, I think it's an obsession,
Hmm.
so that they didn't want to marry you after they were stolen away from your wedding by your rival, having a moment, not the moment that he had. Because if she had not protected herself, I think he would have injured her
Yes.
pretty badly.
Yes, he would have.
Yeah.
Agreed.
He also didn't know she could do that.
No, he had no clue.
So
Also in terms of drama queen, like he like he keeps being like, "You're not going back to the night court." And Vera's like, "Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it." And she is just thinking that a week in the night court in that like open room might be a nice break from all of the fights that her and Tamlin are having. And he steps in and is like, "I'll give you anything to break the bargain with her." And Vera's like, "Excuse me, I'm standing right here."
my thought is with all of that, right, is he's not even trying. He's just pretending to try. Like, from what we can tell at this point, at least, he's not trying to correspond with Rhysand. Like, he's only talking to him when he's forced to. He's not trying to correspond with him or anyone else in his court. He's
Hmm.
not sending Lucian to go try and figure. Like, he's not doing any of the things that he would do with anyone else. He's just like, you're not going back.
Yeah. Like
With
zero
nothing to
follow
back him up.
through. Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
he's so. Duh. Ugh.
Craziest thing to happen.
don't know. I mean, the explosion was, I think, the like water wraith scene for me. I remember that sticking weirdly in
Mhm.
my head more than the explosion when I read it.
That stuck a lot. For me, it was the snap moment that she gets into Lucian's head.
Ooh,
She's just
okay,
like all of a sudden in Lucian's mind, and she's like, "Oh shit."
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
That was rough for her. Yeah.
for her. Yeah. It's also like
Yes.
all of a sudden, like, I don't know, the first 5 chapters, it's just like, oh, she's strong, she breaks things, whatever. And then here we are, and Reese is like, you're stronger than a normal high fae
Yeah.
would be. And she's like, no one has said a single thing to me about that. And then I think like him putting that seed of knowledge into her mind awakens the powers a little bit, and then all of a sudden
I
she's
think so
like
too.
snapping into Lucian's mind. She gets that power from Rhysand, we all know. And like
She does.
burning the table and then protecting herself with a shield of invisible air. Like,
Hmm. It's also the powers that she knows about as well. I'm curious as she learns about the other ones if those will manifest.
mhm.
Because I'm assuming it's a little bit like you have to like know and tap into them to ignite them. Because all of those are things that she knows that can be possible.
Yeah, that's true. This is getting a little bit into the deep dive. But speaking
Yes.
of the powers, she also feels like a beast roiling inside of her, which would be Tamlin's power with the
Yes.
shapeshifting.
Which is interesting.
Very interesting.
He not gonna like that.
Hmm.
He's like, time to
Um,
own the beast.
do we have any other? Okay, I think that's all for our section
Yeah.
superlatives.
We had like Feyre is dumb and Tam Tam is dumb, but I think we've covered. The
Yeah,
Feyre is dumb things start kind of going away a little bit
they
in this
do.
book, I think. She's making
Yes.
somewhat smarter choices, or trying to.
Yes.
She's doing her best to try to make better choices moving forward.
Hmm. I do have a lot to say on the Tam Tam is Dum Dum front,
Yeah.
but I'm curious to hear what you have to say in Colleen's Corner first, because I feel like it might be maybe the same thing.
It's kind of similar. It's kind of twofold a little bit, but
Yeah.
yes.
All right,
Yes, it
well, let's go to Colleen's Corner then.
Colleen's
is.
Corner.
Okay, so it's kind of a twofold thing. It's once again about relationships because that's what I study in these books. Um, and what really snagged for me in this was Feyre watching Moore and Rhysand interact. And I think it kind of put two different things into perspective. One, how maybe a normal family interacts with each other, and two, how a normal High Lord functions with
Yes.
his advisors and courts and people around them. Um, because like was I've talked a lot about her family structure, but it's not typical. I wouldn't say like she's had a lot of trauma that has made her family into what it is. I'm not saying that it's completely their fault. It's just the nature of what has happened to them.
Hmm.
But yeah, like she's never had like this playful, bantery, goofy relationship with her father, with Elaine, who's even like the nice one. That's just not how her family. So I'm sure that felt like a foreign, like almost concept to
Hmm.
watch for her. And then I think this is if I was Feyre, right, watching this, I would say Moore is not all that different from Lucian in terms of personality and how they think and do things.
Hmm.
Lucian's a little flirtier than Moore is, but not honestly not by much.
Not too much more, yeah.
And seeing how Tamlin, because like, I mean Tamlin pretty much calls Lucian his brother at this point. Like I think that's what he
Hmm.
considers him. And seeing how Reese is allowing Moore to talk back and to yeah make goofy faces, and he's just like mildly annoyed at her and isn't snapping and like he's not pulling rank
Yeah.
even once. Like she literally just shows up in his house and he's like, "Why are you here?" And she's like, "You said I can come anytime." And he's like, "Whatever." Like he doesn't
Hmm.
like kick her out. Like he doesn't force her to do any of these things,
Hmm.
which I think is very interesting from like again from a Pharaoh perspective. I know what's happening. I can see it. But from her, she's not had these like crazy healthy relationship models. It's a lot harder to see something going wrong if you've never had a right model
Hmm.
in your
Yeah.
life. If you've only ever had dysfunction, you're not going to know what function looks like. essentially.
Correct, correct. Kind of to add to that, even so like she's introduced to Moore. Moore is like, if you want to see me,
Hmm.
just, give a shout, you know. And she's very
Yep.
warm and she's like, you're gonna be my friend, all of this stuff. At the end of the week, Farrah's like, I didn't see Moore, and Rhysand was like, she was waiting for an invitation from you. She wasn't just going to show up without you wanting
Yeah.
her to. And Farrah
Boundaries.
was like, well, no one told me. And he was like, you didn't ask.
Yeah.
She's so used to being told what she can and can't do, it didn't even occur to her to be like, hey, I want to see more of this new person. Because she's very clearly intrigued by her. And she very clearly has no bad feelings towards Moore. Like, I think Moore feels like a safe person.
Yeah. She does. I touched on that a little bit last week of, yeah, like that. And even like if we're juxtaposing more with Ianthe just shows up. Ianthe does what you want. More, again, sets boundaries, understand that people may not want her around in situations, and
Hmm.
is trying to give Feyre the autonomy that I think has definitely been stolen from her, essentially,
Yeah.
in the Spring Court of like she can't make any of her own decisions. And I understand that there probably is some complications with her not understanding Fae culture and tradition, but they don't explain it to her. Like even going into the tithe, Tamlin didn't explain to her what really was going to happen. They're like, you're just supposed to sit there and
Hmm.
let Tamlin do it. Tamlin has a hold on it. Don't even worry about it. But they don't explain anything to her of
Yeah.
like, this is why we do like she has no context of what any of these different types of Fae are or what like she just has nothing
Hmm.
to go off of. And then he implodes on her and gets mad for her not following protocol that she was never told.
But she doesn't not know she needs to follow. Yeah.
Oh,
And
and
also
also I
for like being a person with empathy, you know?
yeah,
Like, she's allowed to have her
the
feelings.
she is allowed to have the feelings. I can see why public like disagreements are complicated when you're in these like
Mhm.
positions of power. So I understand where he could be a
Yes.
little bit like, "Hey, maybe do that in private next time. Thanks."
Mhm.
But like I
But
don't
there
like the
wasn't
concept
even
and
sorry, there wasn't even that. It was just like, you should not have done that, period.
well, because it makes him look weak, and that's the thing. And that's the thing that I think is really interesting between Rhys and this is a recurring theme and we will keep talking about this, but the juxt very clearly Rhys and Tamlin are supposed to be each other's like foil opposite
Foil.
things that is
Mhm.
presented to Feyre in this book. I think that's clear in the way that like I don't know, weak men truly have to do everything in their power to look strong. Men who have strength inherently know that they are, and if they're challenged, they're not going to matter that much because they know that they can defeat them, right? So
Mhm.
Rhys is considered one of the most powerful High Lords in the world. Other people, we don't really know how powerful or not Moore is. He doesn't seem to be threatened by
Mhm.
other people in his life. He's very comfortable with himself. He understands where his power rests and where it is. Tamlin, seemingly who's been ruling for a while, right, is older, never had that same like settled confidence in himself, and
Mhm.
he is actively taking his own insecurities and projecting it onto other people and forcing them to have to do what makes him feel better about himself,
Mhm.
to make himself feel not weak.
Mhm.
I hate it.
Yeah, and he also surrounds himself with people who he surrounds himself with yes men. As much as Lucian
Yeah.
is his brother and wants to be a friend to Feyre and all of that stuff, he will always side with Tamlin, as he's shown. And Ianthe
Hmm.
will always side with Tamlin. Even Alice, who tells Feyre, basically tells her that she did the right thing, is like not saying it because
Yeah,
she
he
can't.
doesn't want to hear it. He
Yeah.
he only wants to hear what feeds his own ego.
Mhm.
He wants to feel big and powerful and all of this, the beast inside of him kind of thing. He wants to feel like the beast
Mhm.
kind of thing. And he's not that does not make a good ruler, to be honest with you. And I think he feels that, and I think that's his problem. I think he can tell his people are discontented and they're upset with him, and there is this like stirring happening. We don't really know this. This is what I am thinking in his mind, right? If
Mhm.
I'm this like ruler, you know, we've been gone for 50 years, they ransacked like this woman, came in and ransacked my castle. Someone from the Night Court actually came in and took me away.
Mhm.
All of this stuff. They watched my supposed betrothed. Basically, well, I did nothing.
Mhm.
Almost be slaughtered, right? This is all well-known information. He comes back and suddenly he's having to reestablish his power, and the only way he knows how is by brute force.
Yes.
Like truly just brute forcing it through.
Mhm.
And Feyre's trying to be like, there's other ways to do this. And he's
Yes.
like, no. He refuses to
He's like,
listen.
"What do you know about ruling?" essentially.
He views her as, I think, which is what she feared. I think the moment he found out she was illiterate, he viewed her as dumb. And there was
Mhm.
nothing. Like, he's like, oh, well, you're just uneducated. You're this poor little girl that I stormed into your, poor little cottage. And, like, oh, well, yeah, you can't read. You can't take care of yourself. Which she did, by the way. But that's what he's viewing her as. And is treating
Yes.
her almost that weird, like, infantilization kind of
Yes.
thing, almost. Except he wants to marry her, which is a whole weird. It's a
It is
thing.
weird. It's the
But
dysfunctional relationship thing where like he very much views her as a helpless, innocent child.
yeah,
But he
he
also
does.
sexualizes her an uncomfortable amount. If you're going to have that view of a woman, you shouldn't want her to be your wife. That's weird.
Weirdly, that is common in very, very large age gap relationships. Like, there's
Mhm.
differences between, but when, like, 40-year-old men are dating an 18-year-old, there is no way a
Yes.
40-year-old man can look at an 18-year-old, or vice versa. Woman can look at an 18-year-old man, whatever gender.
Mhm.
Regardless, there's no hope without looking at them. I am not 40, and 18-year-olds are babies,
Our children.
right?
Yes.
So
Mhm.
there's this, like, it's almost like I think because she is young and he's Fey and, like, infinite, and not think she is young
She
in
is.
Fey terms. And I think he's also thinking of her in that sense. I'm like, then don't marry her. Like, you can't have your
Right.
cake and eat it too.
Yes.
Like, you can't do both. Which is what
Agreed.
she's saying. She's like, marry someone that can put up with it. That's
Yeah.
why she's saying that. Like, if you're viewing me this way and not viewing me as your equal partner, then
Mhm.
marry someone that can do that for you. Like, that's
Mhm.
not me. Anyhow,
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I don't like it either. I think this is a really good segue into our Tam Tam is Dum Dum segment. If that is all
Which
you
is,
have for your Colleen's
yeah,
Corner.
it's just me ranting about how much I hate Tamlin. That will be a recurring theme, in case you're
Yes.
curious.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Reintroduction of Tam Tam is Dum Dum.
Woo!
Woohoo! All right. So I have a lot to say here, and I don't really know how or where to begin. So I'm just gonna go from what we just said
Hmm.
with like the infantilization of Farah and all of that.
Hmm.
He literally does not know who Farah is
Hmm.
at all.
Hmm.
Like, at all. And he does not want to put in the time to get to know her. He didn't put in the time to get to know her as a human once he found out that she couldn't read, but she likes to paint. He was basically like, "Great, those are the only two things I need to know about you. We're done here." And then she
Hmm.
died for him and to save his world and was brought back to life. And he's like, "Yeah, you're still the same. I mean, I'm still the same, so you're probably still the same."
Hmm. He's also not the same.
He's
He also
not.
needs to realize that. He's not the same. Tamlin is not the same Tamlin that went under the mountain at
No.
all. And he's not wanting to recognize that. But
Mm-mm. No. He another reason he's dumb dumb. It goes back to that whole weak man thing. I think he's threatened by how strong Farah is.
incredibly, incredibly
Yeah.
threatened.
He like routinely puts her down. I think he knows that he's suffocating her. I think he feels bad about it, but I don't think that he can stop because he needs to show that he is the High Lord. He is in power, and
Hmm.
what he thinks she needs is what she needs, not what she thinks she needs. You know what I mean?
Yes. He, yeah, kind of similar to what I went into. He truly is so obsessed with his own, like, he thinks so stability and like the protective element for him, stability is the most important thing. And
Mhm.
he thinks that the only way to get back to stability and what he wants in his stability version is to be this like strong, have his pretty little wife literally wrapped up in a bow sitting next to him while he has this glorious crown on his head,
Yeah.
taking like who in their right mind would take a tithe from people who are poor, giving chickens,
Mhm.
right? Like I'm assuming we're going through this process, right?
Yes.
Wearing this like lavish gold crown,
Mhm.
and you're asking them to give. Not that taxation's a whole other thing, but like he could go about it so much different.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, his
just
reasoning for first of all, I also want to talk about this. It's very clear that Tamlin dislikes water wraiths and that Lucian distrusts them and that they're not looked upon as equal. There's
Mhm,
definitely a prejudice there that stems from Tamlin very clearly, so everyone else feels like they have the ability to wrinkle their noses at her and call
mhm,
her gluttonous and say that they'll eat you if they can and like all of this stuff, right?
mhm,
Um he I mean, how dumb do you have to be? He broke down the door to Farah's hovel, as he called it, the hell of a hovel that he said, saw her
mhm,
starving and her family starving and brought her to this place. And then he's telling this water wraith who is like, we don't even have food to feed ourselves. Please give us an exception. In front of his
mhm,
to be wife. He's like, yeah, no, sorry, you're gonna have to either pay today or in 3 days or double next month, or I'm gonna kill you. Um, and when Farah is like, can't you, hey, like, can you just make an exception? Can you please? He's like, yeah, no, sorry. This is just the way it's always been. And then he gets embarrassment aside, then he gets mad at her for doing the thing that she's been begging him to do for the past 4 months, which is provide assistance and support and help the people of the spring court.
yep.
And she's like, you're wearing a freaking crown, one of five, might I add. I've never worn the same piece of jewelry twice. It's nothing to give her that. And like, it doesn't matter if she spends it on whatever she wants. It's still like she still deserves that common decency to have some sort of help given to her. You know, they're members of the spring court. They're supposed to be protected.
They deserve to be treated like they're not humans, but like
Yeah.
beings that have a soul, I guess, if we're gonna get into that whole thing. But like
We can say humans. We'll just blanket statement
they're
humans.
intelligent. They have
Yes.
intelligent life. Yes,
Mhm.
they are the same. They look different. They're the same, which is a whole thing.
Mm.
Clearly, that's where this is stemming from. That's what we're hinting at.
Yes.
But like, clearly, yes, yeah,
Yeah.
they deserve to be treated like they would treat anyone else.
They
And I
do.
honestly think if it was not the water race, I do think he would give an exception to like the farmers up the road that he saw and
Yeah.
helped rebuild
He would
their
to the
house.
fawn that's bringing his chickens or whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah, just because
definitely
you don't
think so.
contribute does not always mean that you are not worthy of things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, what else? The gift of a traveling paint set to apologize for his outburst. Dude, the lady has not been able to sleep, keep down any food, has not touched a paintbrush in months, very clearly stated that she cannot stand the color red,
Hmm.
and you give her a traveling paint set and say, well, I thought that if you got back to painting.
This is the most like classic like abusive boyfriend that you like
Mm-hmm.
one time randomly mentioned that you like I don't know, like I liked bats one time, right? Am I a bat person? Necessarily, but I like bats and every single gift afterwards that he buys me is something with a bat on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's that same equivalent of just
It
being
is the
like,
same thing, and specifically when he's done something very, very wrong, instead of, like, truly apologizing and changing his actions like he
"Mhm."
says he's going to, he's like, "But I thought that if we could go back to normal."
Yes. It's just and like so I am a so fun my gift giving love language is gift giving. So I understand if you are someone who, and I do think that is Tamlin's, to be honest, I do think that's how he shows affection.
Definitely.
And I do think in his mind at the time, I'm not defending this man, but at the time, I do think he was like, this was the most important thing to her. I'm gonna try to give her a traveling set so she can get out of the house. It's like his weird warped way of I think trying to give her kind of freedom, but
Mhm.
getting her back to what she was previously, but
Mhm.
not. So in his mind, he's like, oh, perfect gift, right? This is gonna work. This is gonna be fine. But that's not what it is anymore. It would have been old Ferris, perfect gift, but and even then, I don't know if it would have been. He's not taking any sort of time,
No.
like you said, to figure out who she is,
Yeah.
and just thinks that if he throws something at her,
Mhm.
that maybe it'll fix everything.
Yes. And then I do think, just one last thing, I don't know, I guess we should put trigger warnings in the beginning of this episode because it does deal with abusive behavior. So I can
Yeah,
definitely
this
do
book
that.
a lot deals with this. I mean, this is the
Yeah.
cycle of abuse. I think I've mentioned
Yes.
this before, but this is a very classic cycle of abuse. So yes,
It
probably a
is.
good idea.
So
Yeah.
trigger warning ahead right now for those of you who are uncomfortable with abusive relationships and like physical violence.
Mm. Yeah.
Be warned, we're going to talk about some of that stuff right now. When she is taken from him, she doesn't leave. She's taken
Yeah.
because of a bargain that she struck, yes, but she's taken from him. He destroys half the house.
Mm-hmm.
And there is still evidence he just clearly destroyed it so badly. There's still evidence of that when she comes back a week later despite magic. Um, and
Yeah.
then when she says the thing where she's like, I'm drowning, I'm suffocating, she really, truly, she's like, starts to shake and she starts to have a panic attack. And she tells herself, I owe it to this man who I love to try to communicate with him and try to tell him how I'm feeling because maybe then we can communicate and we can get through it together. And instead of listening to her and communicating with her, he just explodes in a way that could have seriously harmed her if she hadn't had power that he suspected but didn't know that she had to protect
Yeah.
herself. Like, he didn't
Or that
throw
she
a
even.
shield up around her, he exploded on her.
I almost think he wanted. I in the moment he was hurt. I mean, he probably was hurting and wanted to hurt her as
Mhm.
badly as he was hurting. Again, very classic abuse. That's
Yes.
usually the reasoning that an abuser hurts an intimate partner. It is.
Mhm.
They feel hurt and they lash out. That is textbook what he's doing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is yeah, Tam Tam is Dum Dum. Is a very nice, light, pretty way of labeling this section for very deep, dark material that we have to discuss.
Yes. Especially in this book, I think
Yeah.
yes, it is showing. I will say this is one of the things that I think this book is really good with. You see Tamlin in the beginning that wasn't any of this, right? Like he had
Mhm.
some controlling tendencies. I think if you look back, you can see them more now,
Yeah.
but they're not what they are now, right? And this is kind
Mhm.
of I like this book as a way to show people because people are always like, "How do you get in these situations?" That's how
That's how.
you. This is exactly how
Yeah.
they're not almost always never this way in the beginning, especially if they're someone like Tamlin. They're
Mhm.
gonna pull you in and get you to this point to where you're I mean, Feyre's kind of stuck. Like, she can't go
Yeah.
back to the moral world. She cannot go back to her family. She's a whole different person. She's not really a part of any other court. Like,
Mhm.
she really does not have it. She is literally stuck at
Yeah.
this point. So,
She
yeah.
has nowhere else to go.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Ew, heartbreaking.
I know, poor Feyre. Um, let's go to the deep dive discussion, shall we?
Yes.
Let's bring this somber note back to something fun. I'd like to read the things that Rhysand made her
I
read
would
and
kill this
practice
man.
writing.
I would be like she is livid. I would be so livid if this was what I was given.
Yes, definitely.
Like it's
So
funny, but I would be so annoyed.
So, when they first get to the library, and he's, like, trying to gauge what her reading level is, he's truly doing it in a very, like, patient, non-judgmental way.
Trying to, in theory. Yeah.
He's trying to, but the first sentence he gives her to gauge her level of literacy is, "You look absolutely delicious today, Feyre."
It's
Um
also such a random sentence. It's not like one that which is probably the point of it, and I'm assuming
Mhm.
that's why he's doing it. It's not a sentence that she's probably ever going to like have memorized. Because sometimes there's people, fun fact, that's how people who are illiterate can get through schools. They
Yes.
memorize things and they kind of know that that's what that means, but they can't actually read. I'm assuming
Mhm.
that was why, but it's really funny.
It's so funny. Genius. And also definitely to, like, get her I think he knows that she's extremely insecure about this, and so to kind of, like, get her off the defense and just be like, "Hey," like, get her
Yeah.
to stop being so defensive of herself and just get her to the thing that she needs to do, which is learn how to read. And he's right, it
Mhm.
is important to her. She's going to be the wife of a high lord. She's going to need to be able to read and write to perform whatever
Mhm.
duties necessary. So,
Yeah.
other sentences during that week is Rhysand is the most handsome High Lord. Rhysand is the most delightful High Lord. Rhysand is the most cunning High Lord. Rhysand is gorgeous. Rhysand is interesting. Rhysand is flawless.
Flawless might be my favorite.
Flawless is amazing. He's just so like fun and flirty. And she is learning, she's learning to read and write in the funniest way possible, I think. In a very low stakes way.
It's a very low stakes way, but I will say so like I know we are talking about Tamlin in this like aggressive way, but this is not how Feyre is viewing him at
No.
this point, right? She's still like in love with Tamlin. So this
Yes.
man who seemingly like, destroyed the person that she loved,
Mhm.
family and all of this stuff, is just handing her slips of paper that's like I'm the most beautiful. And like
Yeah.
she just has to be sitting there looking at him being like, are you unhinged?
Yeah, she's like,
Like
"What is wrong with you?" Real question, what is wrong with you?
this also continues to further our Gaston comparison that we
Yes.
made
Yes.
last book.
Rhysand thinks very highly of himself. That whole "No one blank like Gaston" is, like, the song that's constantly playing in Rhysand's head about himself.
I mean, he is very pretty. I don't think he's fully wrong. I think he has been told his whole life that he is a very pretty person.
Yes.
But at the same time, that is, I would, like, it's funny and I'm laughing at it. I do remember the first time I was reading it, I'm like, personally, I think I would have almost refused to write these and I would have been like, I will not do it unless you write me different sentences.
Yeah,
Like, try again. But
I
that's
think so
just
too.
that
No,
is
I
not Feyre's
agree.
behavior. It's mine.
I think she's just so relieved to, like, not be hurling her guts up every time she wakes up in the night.
Sure.
Like, she still has nightmares, but when she wakes up, it's like she has air. There's no walls pressing in on
Yes.
her. And she is alone, but truly alone. There's no guards, there's no
Yeah.
sentries. Like, it's almost like she has space to, like, breathe. She has the space to be disgruntled and get really
Yeah.
annoyed and all of that stuff. And as much as she hates it, she's been begging Tamlin to do something useful, and she is learning how to be useful during
She
this
is.
week.
I mean, I know we also want to think the best of Feyre in these situations, but also, she did literally call this man the most handsome man she's ever met, regardless, I
Mhm.
think, of how much she loved and sacrificed for Tamlin. If, like, your, like, essentially celebrity crush whisked you away for a week, it would be hard to, like, maintain a
Yes,
balance. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Like, yeah,
I
like,
do.
that would be a whole thing. Like, regardless of, like, you don't want to think that because she's not cheating on him at all. That is not
No,
what's happening
no,
here.
not at all.
But at the same time, right? Like,
Mhm.
she's probably also a little bit like, I mean, he's not wrong, but like,
Yeah, that's what
that's
I think
kind
it
of
is, where, like, she's like, "I love Tamlin. this man took me away from my beloved,
Mhm.
but he's not wrong about how attractive he is.
And I think she's also seeing that he's not, at least what Tamlin has portrayed to her. I think she figured that out mostly under the mountain
Yeah.
on her own, but I think being taken here and seeing this, she's learning that. But yeah, anyhow.
Mhm.
Oh, Reese.
Yes. I also want to talk about, okay, so let me see if I have this here. Um, they do have a moment where, right after, not right after, when they're like at the breakfast table that first morning that she's at the night
Hmm.
court, and she's like, "Why can't you just let me go? I thought things had changed between us, you know?" And he's like, "I'm not your enemy." And they're talking about, she's like, "I'm not gonna learn to read or shield with you." And he says, "Why? From spite? I thought you and I got past that under the mountain." And then she says, "Don't get me started on what you did to me under the mountain." Reese went still as I'd ever seen him, as still as the death now beckoning in those eyes. Then his chest began to move, faster and faster. Across the pillars, towering behind him, I could have sworn the shadow of great wings spread. He opened his mouth, leaning forward, and then stopped. Instantly, the shadows, the ragged breathing, the intensity were gone, the lazy grin returning. "We have company. We'll discuss this later." I wanted to read that excerpt because that
Hmm.
is, he is clearly also going through
Yeah.
something from under the mountain. And I don't think I
Yeah.
caught that on my first or second or third read, but now that I'm reading it with like
Hmm.
the, like the magnifying
Like we're
glasses
dissecting
on,
it, lens.
yeah,
Hmm.
he he's not reacting to Farah like he's not reacting to her like how dare you say that to me. He's like reliving something in his mind and then he
Hmm.
is like, "Wait, now's not the time," and turns it off because they have company coming.
It's also a great juxtaposition between him and Tamlin, which I
Mhm.
think is a lot of the point of it as well. He controlled himself. Tamlin did not.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Oh
You know, I don't
God.
think I ever processed that either. I always thought of it as like what I said, the juxtaposition, but I don't think I thought about it. I think I always assumed it was a reaction to
Mhm.
Feyre, not necessarily, but it does sound. I mean, it's the signs of a panic attack, essentially.
Yeah, it is the signs of a panic attack, which I thought was
Yeah.
really interesting.
Okay.
Um, I just wanted to talk like a tiny bit more about this whole like the war that's coming.
Oh yeah, the big war,
The
the
big
important
war.
thing that I
Yeah, the
forget that
important
happened.
thing. There's a lot of like drama.
Mm-hmm.
But no,
There's a
so
lot of
there's this,
interpersonal drama.
yes, yeah, exactly. But there's this whole big war we Hybern, which Sarah, Miss Sarah is apparently Ireland.
It's just like I'm still not over that. Like Sarah, it's just Ireland.
So
Come on.
Reese basically, Farah knows that Reese wants something from her. She asks why she has to learn how to read and shield, and he says, "If you agree to work with me, I'll tell you why." And then doesn't bring
Hmm.
it up again. And she's like, "I don't really know what that means." And then he brings her up to this like strategy room at the top of the
Hmm.
mountain, and he's like, "Tell me what you think." And starts making her look at the maps and seeing what she's thinking about all of the positioning and where everything's marked. I'd like to note that the night court is not marked. The night court is still just a huge blank space on this map.
Which is wild, actually.
Wild. Yeah, everything else is very clearly marked. But like to your point where Tamlin found out that Farah couldn't read and definitely just thinks she's kind of dumb, Rhysand does
Hmm.
not think she's dumb. He is like,
No.
"You are a skilled hunter, tracker, and trapper, and you clearly have a very strategic mind because of that." So
Hmm.
he's like, "Tell me what you think of this." And he doesn't give her any hints. He's not really asking for anything. He just wants to know what her thoughts are on the thing.
Yep. He wants outside perspective,
Mhm.
like a
Yes.
normal person.
Yes. Yeah, it's not a test.
Mhm.
It's and then juxtaposition wise, juxta juxtaposed, there we go.
There we go.
Juxtaposed to when she gets back and Tamlin is like interrogating her. He's like, tell me everything about everything. And she questions him about the war. And she questions him about, well, did you know um what's gonna happen? And Tamlin just completely shuts her out. He does not want her opinion on any of that. He is taking care of it. She does not need to ask. She does not need to know.
And also, Rhys never asked about the spring court. Never
Yes.
asked what they were doing. Never asked. I'm close enough to be like, are they prepping? Never
Yeah.
the specifics. Didn't do, which he actively could and probably could spy on all of them through Feyre, clearly,
Mm-hmm.
because she's not
Clearly.
been children this whole time. Does not appear that he has been.
No. In fact, he is giving her the tools to make sure that he does not do that.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Wild. Wild, wild.
Wild. Wild, wild, wild. Um, but yeah, what do you think the ramifications of this
The
war?
war?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. From like a spring court perspective, I don't know. Because there's also been hints that like the spring court was tied with Hybern
Yeah,
at one
Tamlin's
point,
father
right? And
was, I think Tamlin talks about it. You know, his
has he talked
father,
about it? Okay.
what in the first book, his father owned human
Oh,
slaves and did not and killed
yes.
them rather than see them freed in the war.
Wild.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, from like a Pharaoh perspective, like dealing with that from like still having human family
Mm-hmm.
alive and knowing humans that are alive. I actually think this whole storyline would have gone a little bit differently if it had happened about 50 years or so after Pharaoh became Fae. I think if she didn't have any living relatives, I think she'd still care, but I think it would be very different
Mm-hmm.
in the way she goes about it. But I don't know. Since we don't know a lot about it, it is interesting to see what we know of Amarantha, right? Was
Mm-hmm.
terrifying. She very easily slipped in. They have all of these new untested High Lords, and then this like
Mm-hmm.
very powerful. Like Amarantha was just one of his generals, seemingly, right?
Yeah.
We know this, correct?
Yes, yes.
Right?
We do
Okay.
know this.
This like even more powerful than Amarantha, who very very easily took over for 50 years, coming in. So it's not only from like a human perspective. I think Feyre focuses more on that and less on like a what is going to do to
Mm-hmm.
Prythian. Wild,
Mm-hmm.
wild,
Yeah.
scowy.
I do think that it's a little troubling. It's troublesome that Tamlin refuses. So now that Farah knows that Rhysand is fighting, he fought for the mortals and he is planning to fight against Hybern. And I think it's troublesome to her and to me as a reader that she's like,
Yeah.
you know, there's more at stake here than just whatever is happening between your families. Like the entire world is at stake. Maybe you should try to make amends with this person. It might even make this whole bargain thing a little bit easier. And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely not. I'll think about making amends with him if he lets you out of the bargain. Basically, if he returns you to me fully. Like it's a very possessive thing from his
Mm-hmm.
point of view. Um, but that's troublesome and I know Farah has complete faith and at this point in time I do too. Tamlin doesn't want to be like his father. He said that
No,
so many
and he
times
does
in the
not.
last book. He does not.
Yeah.
And so he wouldn't I'm gonna sneeze. He doesn't I can't see him joining Hybern, even though the court
Okay.
had in historically allied with Hybern. I don't think that's going to happen again,
Mm-mm.
but it's troublesome. Like, I don't know, Talman seems very neutral.
Hamlin wants to play pretend, is I
Hmm.
think the problem. He wants to pretend that all their problems are solved now that Amarantha's gone, and Hybern's gonna stay over there, and it's gonna go back to normal. He's like
Hmm.
in denial, essentially.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if, yeah, but neutral is kind of the right word. I don't know if he like actually snapped back into reality, how neutral or not he would be, but it seems like he's wanting to pretend and have his like little Ken and Barbie, storyline
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
his world. And I think if he is not careful, he is going to get himself in very deep water I can't remember who. I don't know who said the quote, but essentially, if you're neutral on injustice, then you're part of the problem.
Yes. Yes.
Essentially, I think he's getting himself in that realm.
He is. Um, oh, another thing. So, like, we're introduced to Morrigan,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then we hear of Azriel and Cassian.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly, Tamlin and Lucian know who that is because those people are because they make faces, but they don't say anything else when Farrah tells them about overhearing this conversation. But the temple in Cesare, she doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
know what that means, but she knows that priestesses were killed. And
Which is
it's,
awful.
yeah, and it's kind of this throwaway comment. First of all, Tamlin and Lucian clearly know what that's all about, but they don't give her any information about it, which is so awful. It makes me so mad. But she makes this comment where she's like, if Ianthe had heard about her fellow priestesses getting slaughtered, she doesn't have any reaction towards
I
it.
hate that woman.
I know.
At this point, I think we can clearly state that I hate this woman. I've been trying to be. I hate her so
Don't
much.
worry. I do too. She's actually the worst. She's a nightmare.
I hate her more than Tamlin, and that is saying something because
I do
I very
too.
clearly have a burr up my butt about Tamlin. But it just
Here's the thing,
oh
we live in a world where power structure between men and women, males and females, we expect that behavior, sort of. Not
yeah.
expect it, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Now,
Hmm.
women acting horribly towards one another is also not out of the realm of possibility, but it makes me so
No,
much angrier.
it's so much more annoying
Yeah,
to me. Yes. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
because like we have the same power structure, right? And so
Hmm.
knowing that it's just oh
Yeah,
oh I
it
hate this woman.
really, grr, um,
Yes, grr,
grr. That's me
grr.
snarling and baring my teeth.
We're really scary and intimidating on the podcast over here.
Yeah, very, very much so.
Absolutely.
Last thing I wanted to talk about. What do you think? So, Farrah's powers thus far, she's very strong
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
fast.
Hmm.
She can jump into people's minds, apparently.
Love that
Yay.
for her.
She feels some sort of beast roiling in her veins, although we haven't seen it yet, but she knows that that's
Hmm.
something. She obviously has fire because she burned the table, but
Hmm.
also, if you recall the moment in the last episode where she throws her sandal at Rhysand's face,
Hmm.
the back of his head, and he dares her to throw her other one, and she throws it at his face so fast he catches it. But what I think we didn't go over was that he catches it, but it was so fast that it disintegrates.
Oh,
That could either be the strength or fire as well.
I don't think I knew that. That's interesting.
Yeah. And then whatever this air shield is, I don't know if that's specific to a High Lord, because Tamlin obviously can create them as well, or if it's just
Hmm.
like a powerful Fae gift.
Fey power. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
What
know.
else? What else do you think she has?
Well, what are the chords? Because seemingly, right, they're
Mm-hmm.
from, which is this is why I lightly mentioned. It seems like she
Mm-hmm.
has to know about them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's the winter. Well, there's the winter court. We don't really know what they have. We're going to assume cold.
I'm gonna
So
assume
I'm
ice.
something to do with ice, and then fall, which is fire.
Yes.
It makes sense. I don't know what power I would have associated with fall. I don't know if fire would have been the
I
one. I think
almost would have associated fire with summer, but clearly it's fall.
I would have. Sarah, this is not necessarily a critique, but if you want to make something interesting or someone wants to have fall powers, decay. I think decay would be such a really interesting power
Ooh,
to go with fall, making things
that would be
decay.
very cool.
It is not in this world, but I think that would be a really cool because if things are like falling off and decaying, like
Yeah.
fungi, like a little fungi situation, I think
Yeah.
that would be interesting. But not what we have. So fire,
Oh, hold on a second. I just had a theory. Okay,
yes,
so
ma'am.
we know that fall is fire, and that's an element associated with the season, right? I'm
Yes,
assuming ice
for winter.
is winter. That's not really
Hmm.
like an element, but then I would wonder if like is spring some sort of earth? manifestation? And then
Yeah,
would water be summer? Or is
I would think so.
water winter because it's ice? Like, what would summer be then?
Yeah, because in my mind, summer is like heat, which
Heat.
I also don't live near a beach, so I don't necessarily think of it as like water, but it
Hmm.
definitely could be. I don't know. What about summer? Really fun vibes.
Yeah.
Just vibes.
Just make everyone have a great time.
Like you like hypnotize them into being like a little bit like
Like,
heat strokey. Just a
yeah.
little.
Or like surfer vibes. You just make everyone start talking in like surfer lingo. Like all of a sudden everyone's like, Cowabunga, dude.
That's what I want it to be. It's I don't know, I'm trying to think of what I associate like summer with. Yeah, I mean again I would say heat, but that's what
But that's
heat,
fall.
not
And again, I
fire.
do understand that because fire in the fall you have like bonfires and stuff, and then the colors are fiery, and you have
Very
the
fiery.
flaming
No,
red hair and the like. I get it, and that's
I
why
I do
again,
get
like
it.
winter would obviously be ice or snow or whatever. Like it makes sense.
Mhm.
But then spring
Well,
and
like but then
summer.
we have like spring, summer, day, dawn, and then night. I don't know if Rhysand's power is specific to Night Court
Hmm.
or if it's just Rhys.
The mind
I
reading.
don't Yeah, I don't know if it's like the sneakiness, like that's what it
Yeah.
is. It's like you sneak around in the night
Hmm.
kind of thing, and that's kind of where it comes from. I don't know.
So like night, I do think there's a little bit there's shadows. He's shadowy.
Hmm.
The wraiths, Nuala and Ceridwen are shadow wraiths.
That's true.
So and
But we
like
don't know if
with
she has
night,
that.
yeah. We don't know if she has that. We just know she has the mind reading.
So I think that's why it's hard to calculate like what she's gonna get from.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if we even really know what Tamlin, outside of like the shapeshifting, fully can do.
Hmm.
Like seemingly he can do other things.
Right. So
We
then like
don't
is the
really
air
know.
shield actually a spring court? Is that a Tamlin gift? Because I don't actually, now that I think about it, know if we've seen anyone else do that, but I know that Tamlin has.
Hmm. I genuinely don't know. Like actually, even from like reading the rest of the books, I don't remember. I don't know.
I
So
don't think it's ever like actually laid out for us who does what. But yeah, so like then like the day court, is she just gonna shine like the sun? Is she ooh,
I
sparkles.
hope so.
Oh my god, this is the skin
Oh.
of a killer, Bella.
She just turns into a Twilight novel.
She just turns
Actually, no, like
into
just a huh, huh.
Side note, when I packed my house to move to New Jersey from St. Louis, our friend Allie lent me her DVD player and her special edition Twilight DVDs with like extended director's cut, blah blah blah. And so I watched that while I was packing. Well, guess what I started watching since I'm packing to move back to St. Louis?
Really full circle for you. I love that
Super
deeply.
full circle.
If you can't tell, we are just fans of things through and through. We are just fangirls at
Yes.
heart.
We are. We are. It's Joel is always like, I'm really glad that you love the things you love so much because that bodes well for me. I'm like, yes.
Like, yes, it
Correct.
does. Gosh, yeah, I don't know. So day, I can't really figure out. Like day, also, like the- we do have a dawn court, right? How do they differentiate between day and dawn?
Is there a dusk court too? No, no, it's just
Maybe
day, dawn. No, because it's seven courts. So it's the seasons
the
and
four
then
celestial
day, dawn, and
day,
night.
and yeah. But like, I mean, I know how we differentiate it. Like, it's when it's kind of lit and then not. But
It's like
like,
when the
why?
sun is rising.
Yeah, but like, how do you differentiate that in terms of a power structure? Like, because they're both celestial sun-based
Can
things.
dawn maybe dawn is the light bringer and day is something else.
Maybe.
Maybe day is like rainbows.
Ooh, I want her to probably just because we get done with Fourth Wing. I want her to have lightning somewhere in there.
That would be very cool. Yeah,
Lightning would be fun. I think lightning's a fun power.
I think so too. I was actually thinking about Fourth Wing and the political intrigue and conspiracy. We
Hmm.
actually are getting some of that already in this book too.
Politics start coming in once Feyre. This book really expands our knowledge of
Hmm.
all of these courts. Hence why we're a little bit like, I don't really know. Like we, it's
Yeah.
because Feyre doesn't know.
Yes.
Feyre does not know. She's not
We
been
are
told.
Feyre. Yeah.
We are Feyre, actually. So, which is the point. Like this is written. Which have we gotten a Reese POV? We start getting Reese POVs in
We
this book,
do.
I think.
We got one at the end of Akatar, but we haven't got any in this book yet.
I don't think there's as. I think you get some. I think it's closer to the end when Feyre has
Hmm.
some more knowledge. But we do start getting different point of views, which is really interesting
Hmm.
later on, and I like that. But yeah.
Yes. Also, really quick before we wrap it up, Rhys informs Farah that Moore is his cousin, quote unquote, in the loosest of terms, because
Hmm.
Farah's like, you guys look nothing alike. So we know that Rhys
Oh.
is now tanned skinned because he's been out in the sunshine, which yay. But
Hmm.
you know, he is darkness, dark hair, purple eyes, dark clothes, all of that. Moore comes in and she's like blonde hair. I think I don't know if it's brown. It's like soft brown eyes and
Hmm.
like she's wearing like turquoise I think or teal or something like that. She just has a lot of color. And
She's not in red.
Farah
Moore is
also,
almost always associated with red.
yes, so
I don't
she's
think she
wearing
is in
like
red in this
turquoise or
though.
teal in this first time that we see
That's
her.
interesting. I never like
Yeah,
put that together, which is fine. But like,
it's fine.
she's almost always associated with red.
She is
That's
as a
interesting.
character, which is
Cool.
which we'll have to get to that one that like maybe the first time we see her in red because I think Farah takes note of it as well, and it's a
Yeah.
different reaction from her reaction to red so far in this book.
Ooh, oh, maybe she knows that. Maybe that's why she doesn't.
I
Because
think
I'm
so
assuming Reese
too.
knows.
I think Reese,
Oh, I
well,
never
because
thought
Reese
about
can
that.
feel the connection.
Well, I mean, he's basically seen her vomit
Yeah,
multiple times, so I'm sure when she
exactly.
was panicking about the roses, he probably could
Hmm.
tell. Oh,
Yes.
okay. Anywho, I have read these books so many times. I have not connected
Yeah.
that until now. Okay.
So she's
Anywho,
she's
that's
not
interesting.
wearing red, which I think the other thing, like in the spring court, I almost feel like Farrah's always like peeking around corners. It feels like there's just a lot of red in the spring court
Which is
unnecessarily.
not a spring color.
It's not a spring color. It's unnecessary. It's not a spring color. And like there is the night court gives like blue, purple. It's all the cool colors.
It's very cool toned. Yeah, well, Reese is. I
Yeah.
mean, it's probably because I love Reese. Reese is vain. Reese looks good in cool colors because he has purple eyes. He surrounds himself with things that look good
He
with
definitely
him.
does. He definitely does. I think
He's
so
like, this
too.
looks good with me. We're
Yeah,
doing it.
exactly. But Farah is like if Reese is the most beautiful male I've ever seen, then Moore is exactly his counterpart, the most beautiful female she's ever seen.
There's gray genes in that family.
Yeah,
They're pretty people.
apparently. Yeah.
Bless them.
And the Illyrians. So, Illyrian war bands, they're a warrior class in the Night Court. It is maybe the only piece of information that we get about the Night Court thus far
Hmm.
in the entire series, is that there
Yes.
is a lesser fae type called Illyrians. They're warriors, and some of the war bands were really happy with Amarantha's rule, and Rhysand and his whatever his court consists of have been like hunting them down and killing them for the past 4 months, which is interesting.
Also, so aggressive.
Yeah,
I get it, but aggressive.
very aggressive. It does seem so if we're juxtaposing Tamlin and Rhysand, that's the one thing they
Hmm.
have in common. Tamlin is purging his lands of Amarantha's influence, so is Rhysand, which is, again, interesting because he was her lover for 50 years,
Right? Yeah, well, seemingly. Yes, which that's a
seemingly.
whole thing. Yeah.
Well, we already,
I don't know.
I think we're hinting at with his trauma response and all of that, and his helping Feyre, and clearly actually not wanting Amarantha to win, that he probably wasn't too happy about the role he was playing.
There was some. Yes. Yeah, I don't want to get too far into it because we get
Yeah,
into
we
that
won't.
later. And
We'll
when
have
you
to,
learn a
yeah.
lot about that,
And that's a whole other
it's an
trigger
incredible
warning.
moment.
But yes, yes.
This book is a lot of trigger warnings. You
Hmm.
probably need to state that ahead of time. They are not necessarily explicit with most of them, I will state.
Yes.
It is a lot of like mention off page. It's not like
Hmm.
because I struggle with a lot of that stuff as well.
Hmm.
And so I was able to get through it. Not everyone can handle even mentioning. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
So, all right. Well, do you have anything else?
No, I went on my rant about Tamlin. That's about all I had for this section. This section in particular just really, every time I do a reread, I just am infuriated
Yeah,
the whole time
for sure.
with him. So that's it.
So, all right. Well, so we will definitely be back the next week, but then I think we'll probably take a break for Christmas, New Year's. And so I think maybe we've got one more episode for you this year, and then we'll see y'all in 2025 after that, which is years just keep getting shorter and shorter.
It's fine. You'll be back to me. It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. All right, so we'll see everyone next week. Have a good week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.